In the Zelda series, there's one returning character that's very mysterious, and that's IMPA. Why is she seen in so many games throughout the entire timeline? We even saw her in Breath of the Wild. There are thousands of years between each game. How does she do that? And in some timelines, she disappeared. Why? Well, let's find out, shall we? Now, the first time that we saw her in the timeline was in Skyward Sword, which is essentially the beginning of the Kingdom of Hyrule, and when the Curse of Demise happened. She typically serves as a nursemaid and/or bodyguard to Princess Zelda, and often offers guidance to Link. Until the release of Breath of the Wild, IMPA was the only character in the series that was truly confirmed to be a sheikah. She served the Hyrulean royal family since the beginning of time, like so many of her tribe. We have seen her in a total of 8 games. Now, that's not weird, but the thing that raises my eyebrow is how far some games are from each other in the timeline. We see her in the Downfall one a lot, and also before the split. There are huge time gaps between those games. Thousands of years at least. How is that possible? And in the adult and child one, we don't see her anywhere. Why is that? Let's start with the first question. We do see her in all these games, but how can that be? An important question here is, are there different IMPAs throughout the timeline, or is it only one IMPA? Well, by the looks of it, there are 4 IMPAs in total, since they mentioned one was born in Skyward Sword, one before Ocarina of Time, another before the Oracle games, and before the events of Breath of the Wild another one. The first one is only seen at the start of the timeline in Skyward Sword. The one that was born somewhere before the events of Ocarina of Time is seen only in that game. And then there's also one born before the Oracle games that we see in that game and in the other games in the Downfall timeline. However, it could also be the one from Ocarina of Time, since the Oracle IMPA is older than the Ocarina of Time IMPA. Alright, what it comes down to is that it could either be a new one or the Ocarina of Time IMPA. Me and Cod Lollish are both a bit confused about this. Well, we're not completely sure on what happened really. The Breath of the Wild one, however, is a bit mysterious, since we still don't really know where it fits in the timeline. But how long can a sheikah live? At what age will they die? Since there are quite big time gaps between the games. Well, in Skyward Sword she lives to be very ancient for a mortal being, hailing from the era of the goddess Hylia and living for thousands of years through to the era of the sky. Whether this is a natural sheikah ability or the work of a divine being is unknown, as she disintegrates into particles of light and fades away when her mission in life is done. However, there's a pattern, since the sheikah monks in Breath of the Wild can also do this. Upon completion of their respective shrines, they give Link a spirit orb and bless him in Hylia's name before disappearing, having fulfilled their purpose. These monks have lived for over 10,000 years, so this probably means that sheikah can live for ages depending on the situation. So there are a couple of options here for IMPA. The first could be that she's some sort of special being and that she can return whenever she's needed. This would explain why she can live for such long time periods and why she fades away in Skyward Sword after completing her task. However, like I mentioned before, she isn't seen in the adult and child timeline, while there is a Zelda that could certainly use her help, so that's not likely. Another option is that she keeps returning because of a task she started in Ocarina of Time. Everybody who has ever played Ocarina of Time knows that IMPA is the Sage of Shadow. Then she fulfilled her role as Sage and could later be seen traveling to Death Mountain with the other sages. And later on in the Downfall timeline, we saw that she had to fulfill that Sage role again. We saw this in A Link Between Worlds. Now, their role as a sage is predetermined through a spiritual lineage or bloodline connecting them to a past sage. So it could be that she lives for such a long time because of her tasks. Just like the Skyward Sword one that stayed around until she completed it all. As a member of the sheikah tribe, she was one of the chosen guardians of the goddess Hylia. She was a loyal and dedicated guardian and servant to her grace in the era of the goddess Hylia. In the final days of her life, following a fierce battle with the Demon King Demise, the goddess ordered IMPA to go through a gate of time to the far future to protect her eventual mortal incarnation and to help her future incarnation remember her former life. All of this would actually work quite well, since in the other 2 timelines, there were other sages which she was not a part of, or there were no sages at all. things kind of change there, and that could be the reason why she's nowhere to be found. So as far as I can see, the fact that she's a sage is a huge factor for her being around or not. The same goes for any task she gets from divine beings. The only time that we saw her, she had gotten a task from one of the goddesses. In Skyward Sword, it was defending her mortal incarnation, and it was guarding the Master Sword. And in all the others, it was her role as a sage. Since even in the games where she doesn't awaken as a sage, she still remains to be a sage. So she needs to be around, just in case. But what about the IMPA that we see in Breath of the Wild? Why is she around? And is she also a sage then? Well, she does serve Hylia on the way, by waiting for Link to return and guiding him after the Great Calamity. And if she is connected to the past IMPAs, then she must also be a sage. However, it could be that she's not really IMPA. Sure, she has the name, but she misses the iconic red sheikah eyes, which is weird. This also makes me wonder, is this the same IMPA every time in terms of spirit, just like the hero and the goddess keep reincarnating? Could it be that IMPA reincarnates when she is needed to fulfill a certain task? Well, it could be. The spiritual or blood connection of the sage role will continue. But is this in the form of a reincarnation, or a new sheikah being blessed with it, who is connected in a way? Well, the Curse of Demise was only put on Link, Zelda and Demise, so only they will reincarnate forever. So the 4 IMPAs we see throughout the timeline are most likely completely different people, not a reincarnation. As you can see, IMPA is a mysterious character, however she has a huge role in the Zelda universe. She's there to fulfill her sage role and helps Hylia as a servant that does extremely important tasks and missions. And that's why she's always around. Hey there, we're almost at 100k, and it's my birthday on June 17. So could we get to 100k on my birthday or before? Let's give it a shot. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and to join my Discord server. We do all kinds of fun things on these platforms, so go check it out. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. This script was horrible for me to voice over, so I hope all of you enjoyed the video because it was hell for me to voice over. It really was.